Well, the Ex Nihilo podcast is all about sort of exploring the way we were created to be. And it's easy to see in the diet world. There's so much going on in the political world as it relates to food and, getting all the dyes out of your food and all that stuff. And it's easy to see how, God didn't design us to sort of consume some of the chemicals that we have been eating for the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 decades. But there's sort of this final frontier that exists. It's like the stuff you spray all over your house and you wash your clothes with, the environmental toxins, the chemicals that we are sort of absorbed in. We live and swim in this stuff. And so I've got an awesome expert from a fantastic company on to help us unpack that. Allison Evans, she's one of the co-founders of Branch Basics, which is a amazing brand that I've gotten a chance to try. It's a non-toxic plant-based cleaning products, and their goal really is to create healthy homes by eliminating toxic cleaning products. You've been doing that for a while now. Allison, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. That was an intro. I love it. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I've gotten to watch a bunch of your content online. I've gotten to see some of the interviews you've done, and I know you're going to add a ton. But I think the biggest thing, and this is one of the great reasons you're on, is your story and how your story really, the story of Branch Basics is really birthed out of your story in many ways. To begin, would you just share some of your experiences and how that's led to the creation of a non-toxic cleaning company?
Sure. Yeah. I like to say that I'm kind of the glue that stuck us together in the beginning. So I am one of the three founders of Branch Basics. The other two are my aunt, my real aunt. People always say, "Oh, like your dear friend." No, like my aunt. And she's in her mid 70s. And then my best friend Kelly. And Kelly and I met in college here in Texas at the University of Texas in Austin. And that is around the time that my body started to just break down. So Kelly really witnessed me in my low of lows. Before that, I grew up in Houston, always was thought of as healthy. Just because it was, common doesn't mean it was normal, but I did not know that back then. So like the heavy, period cramping, me not having my period for years on end, all these things that were like, oh, well, yeah, we're seeing this more and more. Take some birth control or nothing you can do about it. Just runs in the family or, stuff like that. That's kind of the stuff that I was dealing with up until college, but really nothing other than that. I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, so thousands of cysts on my ovaries in high school. But again, this was so common, right? So here I come in college and I start having this acute pain, running really starting at my neck, kind of upper shoulders, and then all the way down my back and shooting down my legs. I was put on after seeing, PT and Rolfing and acupuncture and, all these medical masseuse and steroid injections even. I finally was on hydrocodone twice a day for a couple years actually. And I was even having neurological symptoms like nerve related. I would go and pick up, a carton of milk back when I drank conventional milk. I always love thinking about that, how far I've come. And the milk would fall to the floor. I mean, I was getting so weak. So no one really knew what was going on with me. I traveled the country seeing lots of different doctors, and the final doctor actually here in Houston threw out how my symptoms most resembled MS, early stage MS. And I just remember that being like the first time that I was like, whoa, okay, is this like a life sentence here, And I was a sophomore in college at the time. And so I just thought something has to give, right? So my aunt comes along, my Aunt Marilee, and at the time, I will be honest, she was just this hippie that lived out in the Texas Hill Country that ate real food and used like real like bar soap, like from a natural food store, like Whole Foods. Like that was kind of weird back then. No, but she was one of the first people to go to Whole Foods in the 80s when it first started. But then when I was in college, it was early 2000s. So it still wasn't as popular as it is now. And she started talking to me about toxins. And, I'm like eating Splenda daily and 100-calorie packs, again, early 2000s,
Right.
calorie counting, looking great, feeling horrible, right? And Marilee explains this idea of how it's not only in our food, because obviously I knew that there was this idea of eating healthy and eating junk. I knew that. But the concept of environmental toxins, besides like a smokestack, and like pollution from a car was like kind of like nothing for me, So the Windex and the paint and the VOCs coming from these things, the hairspray, the hair dye, the, bi-monthly manicures. I mean, all of these things she starts talking about are like drops in the bucket of, our kind of this life threshold that we have. And like, when is that spillover? Because we all have it, and she talks about how these toxins can manifest as headaches and eczema and quote unquote allergies and asthma, even all the way to behavioral disorders because they're neurotoxins. But then you have, autoimmune and cancer and the way that it can turn on and off genetic expression. So I'm thinking, what in the world? I've used these things my entire life. Like, what does this have to do with my pain right now? And again, going back to that threshold, we all have that threshold of spillover. And so some people don't show it and they seem totally healthy and they all of a sudden have cancer at 72, but they didn't just wake up with that cancer. These are things form off over time. It's kind of these micro doses. So all this to say, I am at rock bottom with my health. And I thought, you're a little bit crazy. Everyone else is using this stuff. I've used it my whole life. I don't know what this has to do with my health, but I'm going to try it. And sure enough, after just doing kind of a minimal clean sweep of my apartment in college, I'm living with Kelly at the time, I'm able to drop down on doses of antidepressants and sleeping pills and hydrocodone and muscle relaxers. And I couldn't believe how my body was responding just to the kind of the basic removal. So that
Wow.
summer of 2008, right? I know. Kelly and I are like, okay, we graduated from college. Let's go live with your aunt. Let's soak up these things she's talking about. So we get out there and she's like, okay, guys, we're going to be barefoot on the ground. We're going to drink juice. We're like, yes, we love orange juice. This is great. We'll be outside. She's like, no cell
That's
phones and
great.
not orange juice. I'm talking beets, carrots, ginger, kale, lemon, dandelion greens. We're like, what's a green? So it was just this mind opening experience. I learned how to like cut an onion. I mean, things that I'm like, this is what college should be teaching, right? And so that summer of 2008 totally changed our lives. Not only did I leave at the end of the summer, basically pain-free. I would say 95% pain-free. I was able to hold a desk job. I mean, before that, I wasn't even able to be in a car for more than an hour without ice packs and pulling over and such. But we left that summer just with this burning passion to open people's eyes and to spread this information that Marilee had been consulting for 35 plus years with her clients. And just this idea of getting back to basics. And just removing these things that are hindering our God-given ability to heal, because our bodies are made to heal. God designed us in this beautiful symphony, and we can run in the direction of healing if we will just get out of our own way. So I left that summer empowered, excited, felt great, and then ended up actually going back to that same doctor that I went to in high school that diagnosed me with polycystic ovarian syndrome, and all my cysts were gone. I was asymptomatic. I was off birth control, of course. That wasn't part of Marilee's protocol that summer. And I ended up trying to get pregnant 3 times, and we have 4 children. So that's what happens when you're when you're cleaned out. And so that's just the power of pure, is what we like to call it. And that's really the reason I'm only talking about education and passion here is because we use our products as really a vehicle to spread the word and educate people and open people's eyes. We are first and foremost a wellness lifestyle company, and second, we are a product company, although our products are great.
I think that's obvious. I think it's hilarious that your aunt was like, rub some dirt on it is the answer. Get it
Yeah,
off the pills.
yeah.
Like, just go stand in the dirt, get rid of your cell phone, and
Yeah,
drink
reduce
beets.
inflammation, just get outside. Yeah.
Sounds like Dwight Schrute, you know what I mean? But
Yes.
in the best of ways. I think it kind of reminds me, it really makes me curious, like the office job culture we all live in. You sit and you're breathing like this recycled air. It's, there's all these toxins and pollutants in the air. You got, like your whiteout and all these different, the chemical runoff from like the
Sharpies.
printer. The
Yeah.
Sharpies, yeah, another good one. And there's all these chemicals, and then you're inside. You have shoes on, carpet, the laminate flooring or whatever, and the
Airtight
fluorescent
buildings, the
lighting.
green industry, buildings. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so antithetical to the design that we were
Yes.
granted, and so I think your story's fascinating. But I do want to ask about. I don't think you were ever raised in this idea of like, I'm going to use Windex. That sounds great. Or 409 is the best. Or, Tide is what I want to go to. Most people don't really think about household product ingredients at all, let alone, and I know I hadn't, let alone how they're affecting your health. So why do you believe we've sort of defaulted to just like going with whatever these companies are telling us and what we should use?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, gosh, it's a much deeper question on human brain patterns and habits. And, I think that it's the same idea of money and convenience. Let's really face it here. I mean, soap, just the idea of soap and lye. I mean, this was like 1800s, right? I mean, we've been cleaning for a long time. Probably not long enough, but we did discover that it has an impact on the health. I think that was in the early 1900s or 1800s, maybe. I'm not a history buff, but I will say in World War One in Germany, they started running low on animal fat. And so that was really the first idea of this chemical cleaner, and that's where detergent came from. And then let's see, Johnson in like I want to say that 1930s or 40s um, came up with palm olive, and it was from the actual fat from palm and olive. And since then, we have
Wow.
created lots of different, chemical surfactants and additives and preservatives. And it's not even just the ingredients, it's the way that they're processed. Like 1,4-dioxane is a byproduct of the ethoxylation process, which basically makes, things sudsier and such, So the idea of a surfactant and a soap, like these are things that we've been using for a very long time. But as humans discover things and develop things. Like we want things fast, we want things convenient. And so there's also a lot of money in this too. There's a lot of lobbying. So the cleaning product industry is federally unregulated. So the ingredients do not have to be listed on the label. And therefore, a lot can be grandfathered in and
Wow.
snuck in and used. And so when there's not really any consumer resistance or demand for change, why would there be change, right? There's too much money in what's happening right now. And it's really hard, if I'm being honest, like to connect the dots between these chemicals that are being used to the symptom, the disease, the cancer that they're producing, right? A lot of these things that we're experiencing as humans, these neurodegenerative diseases and autoimmune and cancers and even things, pediatric wise, it's just off the roof, asthma, allergies. A lot of these things do not, they're chronically developed, right? And so it's really hard to say, oh, well, this was because of my cleaning product. But thankfully, more and more studies are proving, showing that exposure to average cleaning products after a deep clean is like smoking a pack of cigarettes. I mean, we have a lot of information about what bleach can do and how it is a carcinogen and how it does cross the blood brain barrier and crosses the placenta, And so we need to wake up as a society and realize just because we've been doing it forever, it doesn't mean that it's okay. And if we look around and we look at the statistics, and we think, oh, we're all healthy, but what is healthy? Almost everyone we know is on a prescription drug. They're having issues with, sleep and chronic fatigue and skin issues. And like I said, the asthma, the allergies, so many of our children are medicated just to be able to sit through class. And we can't keep blaming our genetics for that because these toxins turn on and off, like I said, genetic expression. So you have, your genetics loads the gun and the environment pulls the trigger. I love that analogy because I feel like it really helps people
It's good.
understand that, like, it should be empowering. The idea of epigenetics, the idea of how our choices can actually affect our genes is so hopeful. And I think that that's the message, like really from the Lord, if I'm being honest. Like, I'm like, we have control. Like he says, eat, this is the food that I've given you to eat. This is the fuel. And so when people say, oh, well, all food is good, we don't want to label, yeah, all food
Mhm.
is good, but this actually isn't food. Anyway, that was a really big tangent, but I think it's so hard to just stick within cleaning because I think it is just the human tendency to do what we've been taught, to believe what marketing and what our parents have done and what marketing tells us, and especially when there's a ton of money being poured into it.
Well, I think part of the vision for the podcast is trying to like sort of get everything out of its like little silos, its segments. You've got food over here, eat diet over here, exercise over here, cleaning
Yes.
products over here. You got skincare over here. Like it's all sort of like segmented, but all this stuff really goes together. It's how the human body's interacting with its environment, and it's by our design. And so I'm trying to like in my small ways bring awareness with people like yourself, like to say, hey, all these things actually go together. Can you give me the quote again you use? It's genetics loads the gun,
And the
environment pulls the
environment pulls
trigger.
the trigger. Yeah, and that's really based on the statistic that 90% of our illness, our disease, is environmental. So 10% now they're saying is genetics, right? And if the idea of epigenetics, which is essentially how our everyday choices affect our genes, um, means that we actually have the power. Like we should be looking at these statistics and have no fear. Really, truly, we should say, wow, like how amazing that I don't have to be that statistic, that I have the power of the purse, that I have the power to say no to the things that are not food that go in my mouth, and to say no to the things that are not clean and that I'm bringing into my house or putting on my body. And and the things that we can't control, like we have a God who knows that, and he has won this battle, and we don't have to sit back and fear the things that we can't control. I think that we're held to a much higher responsibility once we have the knowledge.
I love that. Yeah, it's so powerful. Seeing all this connected is really bringing to mind. So I grew up in the Bay Area, and I used to live in a neighborhood just for a short period of time that was it was on the water on the southeast part of San Francisco, but it was an old naval shipyard from the 1940s and 50s. This is where they had some like covert government projects where there was radioactive material that existed there. And at a certain point in the 60s, they just abandoned the shipyard. But they found did some tests on the soil in the region. They can't do a lot of construction there because of the sort of radioactive nature of some of the soil, because they don't want to disrupt what may or may not be down in the ground. The weird studies on the health that they've done in that area is that like rates of asthma, cancer, heart attack, everything is significantly higher within just a mile of being near that area. And so if people don't understand how environment affects you, certainly that might be an extreme example, but think about, like you mentioned, the sort of threshold, the cumulative effect of living a life in a city, which most of us live in suburban or urban locations, not rural. And so what may or may not be happening to us cumulatively.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's huge.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, were you asking me that? Is that a
No,
question?
no, it wasn't a question at all. It was more of just an observation. And well, and going along with this, I mean, I think most people aren't going to have polycystic ovarian syndrome, maybe potentially as a result of this. They might have, I don't know, they might not have serious health complications, but what are some ways we might be able to like see if we're being affected by some of the chemicals around
Yeah, I
us?
mean, I think even, we talk about laundry a lot, and I think this is one of the best things that you can do that you really be able to see a difference. So if you're someone listening and you have grown up using conventional laundry detergent and that's just all you don't even smell the fragrances and the chemicals in that because I hate to say this, they're like coursing through your veins and they've become part of you and you're
Great.
desensitized. You're desensitized. There's like a maladaptation to those chemicals, right? Um, and when we remove these chemicals, that's really the only time that we understand how much they've been affecting us. And so I always talk about this analogy of a smoker. You've smoked your whole life and then you finally get off cigarettes. I would not know, but I've heard this. You can not be around smoke. You're just like, oh, how was I
Mm.
doing that? And so it's the same kind of thing with your fragrances. And so I talk about detergents because if you think about it, they're on your pillowcase at night, they're on your clothes you're wearing right now. You're naked in the shower, you have your washcloth. I mean, you literally do not escape your laundry detergent, right? It is on you, and our skin absorbs, they say, around 60 to 70% of what it's in contact with. So remove that detergent, or a lot of times you have to buy new clothes as you're detoxing your detergent. That's a whole other detoxing your current clothes that have been, impregnated with these chemicals. But once you're removed from it for about 10 days, we give people this challenge. Go back and take a sniff of that detergent, and you will probably have a symptom because your body basically has started to release and detoxify these things. The body is amazing and it's always seeking homeostasis. So as soon as these chemicals are removed, our bodies are going to naturally start dumping, whether that's through our kidneys, which is urine, CO2, like lungs, CO2, we have our sweat, we have bowels, all the things. That is how these chemicals are coming out. In fact, if you were to do a urinalysis with like, let's say Great Plains Labs, a functional lab, and you test for these certain chemicals in a urinalysis, after you've gotten rid of these toxins in your laundry room, your urine will have high amounts of those chemicals in it almost immediately because you've been dumping through your kidneys. So our bodies want, like I said, they want to run in the direction of healing, and we bioaccumulate these things. And so removing them and noticing that maybe your skin isn't as dry. Maybe you don't have to slather yourself with lotion after a shower. I used to have to do that. Now I never use lotion. Maybe your body odor isn't bad. That's one of Kelly's claim to fame parts of her
Wow.
story is she left that summer with Marilee and has not used deodorant. I mean, she has no body odor. Maybe you have your period, women that are listening, and you didn't know it was coming. You just had your period.
Wow.
Like
Wow.
that's what happens to me. And that's what happens to a lot of women who are healthy. You just have your period. That's it. You have no other symptoms. Maybe your husband is a runner and all of a sudden his mile is quicker because he doesn't have these asthmagens in his lungs, which are the like not another word for these chemicals that are in the detergent. Maybe your child doesn't have the allergies and the asthma that we thought he did. Maybe it's not the genetic form that we thought, and he doesn't need his inhaler because all of a sudden these chemicals are removed and he has more room to breathe. In Chinese medicine, your colon and your lungs are paired organs. And even from a more Western mindset, we know how much the lungs and the large intestine, the colon, are related. And so a lot of times these chemicals can produce, tummy aches and lots of kind of gut issues. So those are all a range of symptoms, and those are just the smaller ones. Let's talk about the endocrine cancers. The prostate and the breast and uterine. That has to do a lot with the endocrine disrupting chemicals that are found in the detergent. And I'm just taking one chemical that you're exposed to every single day and just kind of
Right.
walking through how that can affect someone from a simple headache to all the way to, cancer.
It's more insidious than eating a food and going, oh, I'm allergic to this food. I
Right.
sense something. I got a canker sore or a
Yes.
headache after I drank that thing. Whereas you're sort of bathed in, like, quite literally in some cases, these sort of chemicals when you're talking about laundry detergent. The worst thing might be your pillow. I mean, you're literally laying on it 8 hours a day. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a one third of your
Is that crazy? I
day.
mean, if you really think about it, like those chemicals, I mean, often a slew of toxins that are known toxins. This isn't just, oh, this natural lady's telling me my conventional detergent's bad. I mean, you can Google this now, right? I mean, New York
Yeah.
Times and all the things. And to think that we're literally deeply breathing into this pillowcase all night long, and at night is when our bodies were designed by God to restore and to rejuvenate and to naturally detoxify all of the offenders that we come into contact with during the day. But we were never created to be in contact and exposed to the amount of chemicals that we are today.
But I mean, the commercial told me that when I make my bed, it's going to smell
Yeah.
fresh, Allison.
Yeah.
So the common misnomer may or may not be, and I'd love to get your opinion on it, is that, well, sure, you can get some foo-foo natural stuff to spray on my counters or whatever, but like I need the stuff that actually works.
Right. Yeah.
Like you get that a lot. Like, is that true? Does bleach and Mr. Fantastic and Mr. Clean, do those work better than natural products?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I could just say no, they don't, because I feel so strongly that natural cleaners work super well. I mean, vinegar will kill salmonella and E. coli, right? Like just the vinegar, and um, but what's happening is it's a trade-off, right? And so, one, we believe that you can just spray a disinfectant on a surface, or even like use a Clorox wipe, for instance. But what you don't realize that if you read the small print, that before a disinfectant can actually do its job, that surface has to be cleaned. Think about that. Okay, we think of a disinfectant as a cleaner, right? But if you read the label, if you go find your disinfectant and you see that it says 99% of germs are going to be killed, this is after that surface has been cleaned
Hmm.
with whatever cleaner you have, and then you're disinfecting that surface. So that's just an example. I say that because I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, this claims to do this. Well, it claims to do that if there's a 4-minute dwell time, or if, like I said, the surface needs to be cleaned first. But we have to remember too that when we choose to use things like bleach, like that, their life is a trade-off, right? And so
Hmm.
sure, that bleach is going to kill the bad bacteria. It's also going to obliterate your good bacteria, right? And so the very thing that
Yes.
we're bringing bleach into the home to do, create a safe environment for our family, right? That's our intention, correct? And so when we do something like that, we also have to understand that we are lowering the very good gut bacteria that is being used to fight the infection that we are bringing the bleach in the house to fight. So, it's a little bit crazy if you think about it, right? And so we're
Yeah.
surrounded by a home full of all these disinfectants and cleaners, and let's say someone we just hired, they did a really deep clean. That's the most toxic your home has ever been, is after it has been cleaned with conventional cleaners. And so that's the most that your family is at risk for actually contracting infectious disease, because your immune system is the most lowered, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
It's sort of like Pavlov's dogs. Like, I mean, when you get your house professionally clean, let's say, and you come and you smell the chemicals and a little of the bleach, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, my house is clean
Yeah.
now. Like, I can
Yeah.
smell that it's clean. But in fact, it's more toxic probably at this point than has been in a long time.
Absolutely. And what's crazy too is the fragrances that are used a lot of times to mask the harsh chemical smell, are just further, kind of throwing gas on the fire, because they are endocrine disrupting chemicals and they adhere to our upholstery, even our sheetrock. And so there's phthalates in these fragrances that basically give them their staying power. So they really stick around. No pun intended. I mean, if you walk into a home and that home has Glade plugins, or they regularly use fragrance sticks and candles and such, like that fragrance is everywhere. Like if you were to vacuum
Right.
the entire home with like a brand new HEPA vacuum filter, and then send that filter off to a lab in Germany that, the Germans know what they're doing when it comes to testing. I mean, they would be able to basically write a report of every single product you have in your home. So it's right, and this is just the dust that's on your, like I said, just on your sheetrock. So yeah, it
Wow.
really is everywhere. What you clean with is everywhere. And so it's not just, the inhalation of these chemicals after they're used, or the, you know, um, absorption through your skin, but so we have VOCs, volatile organic compounds, are what sticks around in the air after a toxic product has been used. Okay. But what we are missing in this conversation is the idea of SVOCs, semi-volatile organic compounds. And these actually are what contaminate the dust in our homes. Even if you are a clean freak, you're OCD, you've been cleaning your house all the time, your house still is full of dust. And so the chemicals that we choose to use in the products that we bring inside of our home actually ride on the dust that stays in our homes. So you have exposure kind of indefinitely.
So the answer to the question, don't these work better? It's like, I guess depends what you mean by work.
Yeah,
If
I
you're
should
trying.
I should go back to that, because
Yeah.
I want to really just say they don't necessarily work better. I mean, Branch Basics, for instance, and any other, like Dr. Bronner's, that's another great example. We use that for body and such in this house. But these are natural surfactants or natural soaps, and they actually have the power to tackle viruses, bacteria, just as well as the Clorox bleach. I mean, even things like 3% hydrogen peroxide and vinegar, when used separately, actually have the same killing power as Clorox bleach. So, like when I have a raw chicken on a wood cutting board, I see no need for a disinfectant whatsoever. I pull out my Branch
Wow.
Basics, I let it dwell, I put it under hot water, I give it some elbow grease, and it is totally fine. I haven't used a disinfectant in 15 years, and we're never sick.
Yeah. Well, that's a great testament to what you guys are doing. I mean, again, like it's sort of we've been trained, we've been indoctrinated to believe that these
Yes.
bigger companies that sell these really massively these chemical packed ingredients. You've got your bleach, like you mentioned. You got all these other different things. The blue index, because blue means clean, and they just sort of train you to go, oh, a simple green because it's green and it's simple and it's green is healthy, and you just have all these different things that you think were supposed to work, and in fact, well, maybe they actually aren't even better products, let alone healthy for you.
Right.
And so that's really, really good
Exactly.
insight.
Simple Green, believe I'm getting this right. Yeah, Simple Green, one of the spray bottle. Yeah,
Yes.
it was voted EWG's worst offender in all cleaning products, including conventional. So I mean, that just shows you're not. And in fact, when you read the label, I read this in the article. They encourage you to dilute it down several times, but yet they're putting it in a spray bottle. So like the consumer, of course, thinks that you need to spray
Yeah.
it, but you should never spray it according to the directions. So that's just an example of something that we can't just assume that, because even like a cleaning product that has an older lady on the front and it comes in all sorts of different smells. I'm not going to mention any names here, But we can't assume because something looks sweet or looks green or looks healthy, that it is. We have to really empower ourselves by turning that bottle around and assessing, vetting those ingredients and the label for whether it's clean or not.
So what are some of the other like main culprits? I know we've kind of talked about a lot of them. Maybe we've covered the whole gamut, but some of the main
No, we
culprits in our own home
haven't.
could be harming us. What
Yeah.
else is there?
So pesticides is number one, actually, over everything I've talked about. So something a lot of us don't think about. We're like, oh, pesticides? Huh, let me think. Do I have that in my house? Um, but we do. I mean, sadly, a lot of us have it in our fridge because we're not buying, when I say we're not buying organic food, that sounds shaming. Sadly, the food that we buy is being sprayed with glyphosate.
Right.
So that's number one. So pesticides are also in the form of roach killer and your weed killer,
Hmm.
and biocides unfortunately are found in disinfectants. Most of our conventional cleaning products that say disinfectants contain an EPA registered pesticide. So pesticides seek lipid dense areas, and because our brain is mostly fat, that is how they work. They work by damaging us on the neurological level. And so pesticides can lead to Parkinson's and tremors and lots of behavioral stuff in kids. Like Marilee
Wow.
has worked with many families when once pesticides and fragrances are removed from the home, the children are performing like amazingly in school. So I would say pesticides is number one. It's probably the product that undermines our health the most in the world, really. I mean,
Yeah.
they were supposed to be meant for chemical warfare, and they've been brought inside of our homes. Um,
Wow.
and then I would say going into the laundry room because of the way that that's just a daily offender. And then synthetic fragrances, so candles and fragrance sticks and plug-ins. And then I would probably look at food storage. So plastic containers, and so food and water storage, I would say are probably the next thing that I would look at when, assessing my home for health.
It kind of feels like everything at this point needs to be we have a re-examination of everything, the way we've been doing living our lives.
I do. I feel like we should be curious and we should question things, especially everyday items. But we should also know that it's a finite process. Besides the pantry and fridge, everything else is finite. Like once you clean out your home and you pick your safer products, you're not thinking about it again. You're just going and you're buying your window cleaner again because you ran out, or you're going to get your shampoo. And so what I'm saying may sound overwhelming, but it's actually so simple, and there's so many wonderful alternatives out there.
It does feel a little bit like you mentioned pesticides. It feels like pesticides is sort of like our lead paint of our generation, or our asbestos. Like, hey, we've been doing this for a long time. Turns out this is terrible, and this is at a much wider and more broad scale, to the point
Yes.
where it's in water supply. Certainly, it's in our garage in a bottle, but like you mentioned, it's all over the food. This is
Yes.
much bigger than any of us could have imagined.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And again, it's that same idea of a pesticide. We're being exposed through, eating and breathing, but also that dust contamination. So when we have a man that comes to our home, I shouldn't say a man, a person that comes to our home and sprays pesticides quarterly or whatever it may be, unfortunately, a lot of those pesticides are actually getting worse over time because they're riding on dust, which is
Oof.
crazy to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, like you don't think about anything riding on dust in your house.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we've painted a pretty crazy picture of like all of these different chemicals and things like that. What's in Branch Basics products?
Yeah.
What are some of the main ingredients? How do you guys make your stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'll start off by saying Branch Basics, it took our current product took over 100 iterations, took over a year and a half to come up with. And we tried so many different people to help us along the way. People would say, oh, well, just a little bit of this or a little bit of that, or all the other green cleaners are using this. And it's true. If you walk down the aisle of Whole Foods, pretty much every product in Whole Foods would not pass our standards of safety, because we believe those little bits of ingredients that are at the very end of the ingredient list, they add up, especially because
Hmm.
it's a daily use product. And back to the idea of epigenetics, like it's shown that just a small amount, as in a drop in an Olympic sized swimming pool, has enough to affect our genetic expression. And so we don't believe that any small amount of something bad is a good amount. So all that to say,
Awesome.
water, which funny side note, when you think about the cleaning product aisle, I always like to say it's basically the water aisle with a few drops of toxic chemicals in it. So you're just shipping water across the country, you know. Um, Decyl glucoside, so surfactants like coconut oil-based surfactants, organic chamomile flower extract. We use that as a preservative. We have cocoa glucoside, sodium citrate, sodium bicarbonate, which is baking soda. Um, so yeah, I mean everything, you know, it's unless you are a chemist, it's some of these ingredients sound scary to you, but
Yeah.
we actually have a really great way of helping people understand and vet ingredients. You can go to the EWG skin database, and if you put in the ingredients, they should be rated between a 1 and a 10. So everything that is a 1 and a 2 is on our good, okay, go ahead list. And everything basically 3 and above, we tell you to toss. And we're not recommending that you search by product. So this is where our recommendations are a little bit different than maybe others and even the EWG itself. We recommend searching by ingredients because like I said, you can have a product, let's say it has 8 ingredients, 4 are not good and 4 are excellent. You know, it can average
Yeah.
up to a great good product, you know. And but those not good ingredients again are adding up. And how many of not good ingredients are we being exposed to from the second that we wake up to when we go to bed and throughout the night, as we talked about.
Yeah.
So we recommend vetting that way. Think Dirty is also another app. We recommend that the product rates 0 on Think Dirty. Um, and what else in terms of vetting
Think
that?
Dirty. Think Dirty is a really good one.
Yeah.
Would Branch Basics pull up on like Yuka, like the Yuka app? That's
You
really
know,
popular right
it's
now.
real. Yes, that's really popular now, and it should. But to be honest, I'm not that familiar with it. I keep hearing about it, and I need to look into it. You can tell I have all my products personally like chosen for me, so I'm not really
Yeah,
on this.
you don't need to check it out when you've already
But I
got them
should
all
know about
dialed
it.
in.
I really should to
Yeah.
help other people. But listen, if there's not an ingredient list, like to throw it out. You know, if there is a warning to throw away at a hazardous waste dump, like if you really think about that, if we're not able to put that product down our drain, we probably shouldn't be putting it around our house and on our kids, plates. Caution, warning, danger, call poison control. I mean, all of these things. Anytime you see the word fragrance or parfum, that is indicating that those smells are coming from a slew of harmful chemicals, mostly harmful chemicals, I should say. Um, and that really needs to be tossed. It's a synthetic fragrance. So if you smell peppermint, you need to turn that bottle around. You need to be able to see peppermint oil.
That's really cool. You know, as a side note, I had this cologne that I've had for years, and I stopped using all this stuff a while ago, but I opened the bottle up, and I was like, I just want to smell. I remember spraying it, and it smelled like chemicals. Like I hadn't noticed that before, but because I hadn't used it in so long that I just was like, oh my gosh, you can just smell. It smelled like Raid or something like that, where you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And how could I have imagined that this was good for me?
Yeah,
I
you were
don't remember.
using it to get the ladies. What in the
Yeah, I
world?
know. What was I thinking? It didn't even work.
It
Yeah,
didn't even work.
it didn't. Well, I did get married. That worked. I
But
don't
your
know if it was
current
from the
wife did
cologne.
not come to you for that cologne. I bet it was something else.
It definitely was not. I'm gonna put links to the EWG skin database, the Think Dirty app and the Yuka app and stuff in the show notes for people listening if they're interested in checking that stuff out. So okay, if they're people are listening to this is their first time exposure to this world, and they're like, okay, I want to get healthy. I want to start sort of building a less toxic home. What would you say are like your top few things that you would do if you're totally brand new to this arena?
Mm. I would say don't think that this means you should go out and buy new things. It actually means that you should remove the things that you have. Okay? I hope if there's one thing that anyone can take away from what they're hearing today, it's that this lifestyle does not mean you need to get more stuff. It doesn't mean you need to spend a bunch of money. It actually means you need to get back to basics. And a lot of times you can do things that are pretty dang cheap and have a lot safer result. So, I mean, even the idea of getting a Filtrete filter that you would use to, filter your in your home and putting it behind a cheap box fan, that right there is a great way to filter your air and not have to go out and spend $500 on the best Austin Air, the air filter that we recommend. So, there's hacks that you can do. Open up your windows and doors. But the number one thing is removal. Go around your house and remove every single thing that has caution, warning, and danger, that doesn't have an ingredient list, that says parfum or fragrance, and get those apps out that we just talked about, and really just understand too that even if you're not using a product, if it's just hanging out in your cabinet and it's been there for years, like it is actually on a parts per million, billion, even trillion, slowly leaching and creating a low-level chemical soup in your home, because it's not just that one product. It's usually dozens of products that we don't use. It's the shampoo sample we brought back from the hotel, or something we got on an airplane, or something that a friend gave us, or some party favor bath ball our 13-year-old daughter got at her cousin's party. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. A bookmark that smells. I mean, nowadays all the kids' stuff smells. Their shoes smell. Every single thing that has a smell, I would remove from your home. So once you've done this process of removal, you have gently fired your pesticide person, then you open up your windows, your doors a few times a week, and really, ideally a day, but some people that freaks them out. Make sure your shoes aren't coming indoors, keeping them in certain areas of the house, especially not in carpeted areas or in your bedroom. These things alone are actually so cheap. This is free medicine. It's amazing. Make sure your water is filtered. Again, there's easy, affordable ways to do that. And we have endless amounts of free information and links on our website when it comes to where to start and how to create a healthy home. But most of these things are pretty low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, aside from a couple products that you guys sell, this isn't a massive $1 billion industry, and that's maybe why it's not so popular, right? It's like it's just going to the farm, like you talked about, putting your feet in the dirt and using clean ingredients and getting the cell phone off your ear. It's going back to the way you were designed and leveraging some of the wonderful natural things that God has made to make our lives a little bit better and a little bit safer. It's not necessarily made in the lab, and that's why it's just not as marketable and it's less popular. Like we talked about fasting. Fasting is free. You can't market that $1 billion industry. It makes it more tough.
Love that. Yes.
Yeah.
So true.
So Allison, thank you so much for being on. Where can people hear more from you, Branch Basics?
Yeah.
Where can they go online?
Yeah. So Kelly and I are, that's our day-to-day job, is our Instagram. So that's the main hat that we wear. So follow us over there. We're on personally sharing lots of tips and trying to get, a reel up every day sometimes, which is a lot of work, and it's really fun. And it's just a fun way to really connect with our followers and customers. So Instagram for sure. And then, like I said, our website, you can pretty much put anything in that search box and you'll come up with some really amazing information. It is a great website to rabbit hole. I find that I spend the majority of my time on my own website learning things, or I'll Google something and then Branch Basics will pop up. I'm like, oh yeah, should have just gone to my website. So that's really fun. It's really a compilation of Marilee's mind working with clients over the past 40 years. Marilee has a entire story that I didn't even have a chance to tell on this podcast today, but it's absolutely amazing. She was able to save her kidneys using food as medicine, save her 10-year-old son after he was deemed a bubble child when he was 10 years old, and she nursed him back to health by understanding the built environment and how to remove these toxins. And he was the first homeschool child to get to the Naval Academy. He fully recovered. He's in his mid-40s with 3 kids. So she has an incredible story. Ended up working with tons of people, thousands of people, I should say, over the years. And so a lot of the articles that we have on our site are just basically putting her brain on the internet, which is what Kelly and I decided we wanted to do in that summer of 2008. So yeah, and then our products, of course, on branchbasics.com, and I believe we have a 15% off discount code for you, Eddie, and your followers.
Awesome.
And that is on all the premium starter kits. So with Branch Basics, do you want to talk about the products for just 1 second?
Yeah, would love that.
You don't understand. So sometimes I'll go full podcast. I never even mention it, but I feel like there's probably people listening that have no idea what Branch Basics even is.
100%.
So we have a 32-ounce liquid soap concentrate, and you dilute that in different spray bottles and foaming bottles. So for instance, when you get your kit, you'll have the 32-ounce concentrate, and then you'll have your empty all-purpose, your empty streak-free bottle, your empty bathroom bottle, your empty foamer bottle, your empty laundry bottle. Okay, so that concentrate is being used to fill up those bottles based on the fill line with a certain proportion of concentrate to water. So you never have to buy those bottles again. You only buy the concentrate again and refill them. So it really saves on plastic. It's sustainable. Like I said, you're not shipping water across the country by pre-filling your bottles.
Yeah.
Um, and then we have an amazing oxygen boost, which is a great scouring agent. And it's great for grout and porcelain sinks and all the pots and pans that we burn at our house, weekly. And then we have a laundry powder. We have a gel hand soap, which is fragrance free in a beautiful glass bottle. We have a new candle. So, yeah, we have a whole line. But the main thing is this concentrate, and it allows you to replace all of those toxic products that you just threw out. However, you never have to use Branch Basics, and you can still have a healthy home. You can use vinegar, you can use baking soda. We have tons of articles on our website about how to use natural things in your home to clean your house that are not Branch Basics.
That's really, really good look and holistic look at what you guys do. We've had an opportunity to try it in our home for a while, and we really, really enjoy it. I think my son has got allergies like crazy, and so we're excited to see some of the benefits for him as well. And so you guys got to check out Branch Basics. It's amazing, amazing company, amazing product. 3 amazing stories that are on your guys' website, including yours, Allison, that really show the passion that you guys have for your company.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me, Eddie. This was so fun.
Absolutely. Hey guys, again, branchbasics.com. Check out Allison, check out Kelly. Amazing company. See you guys next time.